Due to some time constraints, we're editing a few things out, but that's okay. If you want to ask me any questions, have any requests, comments, you can ask me, Michael, Erica, Rachel, whomever. You can always email us anything you want. We're now part of the team, so please, by all means, if there's a question, don't hesitate to ask. So, break's over, and this is really some really geeky but exciting topics coming up here. And this is a topic called cycles. And this is imbued in everything in life, okay? Studying economics, doing analytics and data every day, we see cycles all the time. However, that being said, it's amazing how businesses don't look at time series, meaning long stretches of data over time. And it's critical to understand your business, to understand the economy, your industry. That being said, cycles are also within everything we do, within our psychologies, within our families, within our lives, everything. So this is a fascinating topic for me. And because of this, we created a model, a 9-phase cycle that can cut any topic, any industry, any product, whatever, into 9 phases of a complete cycle. The first thing you do when you see a cycle, or you observe a cycle, or you're looking at data with a cycle, is to figure out the stabilized equilibrium, kind of analogous to the TPSI, okay? And then you want to understand peaks and troughs. And you want to be able to identify these different 9 phases. Peaks, where contraction begins, where your cycle starts to pass down below the stabilized equilibrium point, where it starts to continue to go down but yet starts to decelerate, and then hits trough, and then conversely back up the other side. Why is this important? Again, just to emphasize what I just mentioned, cycles are everywhere. It's in every economic driver you look at, every demographic, every psychometric. If you don't understand the cycles, you're not going to really understand what you're looking at. And once you do, there are 4 things you want to know. These are one of these points during a presentation that will say, if you're going to leave here and you want one good nugget to take back, this might be it. Okay, so when you look at data, or you're making a decision, or you're assessing some strategy or tactic in your company, okay, you want to know where you've been, where you are now, where you're going, and where you want to be. Those are the 4 key points you want to always have a pulse on. Because if you don't have any of those, one of those 4, you're kind of lost. Back to baseball, okay? How does cycles and the economy and motorcycle sales infuse with cycles in baseball? Well, let's take a look. Because I love baseball, and I think it's a great metaphor for business. We're looking at Albert Pujols, 2010, one of his best seasons, one of his most consistent seasons. Here you see on the y-axis batting average. A couple of benchmarks. That's the all-time season average, 261. That's the all-time single-season record. And there is Albert Pujols' cumulative batting average. Okay? Game after game, it gets recalculated. Ended the season at 312. But what if we looked at his 10-game moving average? Now, what does that look like? That looks like the economy. That looks like your sales. Looks like a lot of different things. Again, everything moves in cycles. You give me data, and I guarantee we'll get it back to you in some cyclical form. Now, again, just to really emphasize the point, this is one of the greatest hitters in baseball, and look at the slump. He had a slump hitting 147 for a time. And of course, there was also some equal. Yeah. I know. I'm a Met fan, so I can't really criticize on anybody. I think we're still paying off the investment scam that they went through with Bernie Madoff. Did you know that the Mets invested heavily with Bernie Madoff? Figures that's my team. Okay, so let's take a look at Babe Ruth. This is arguably one of the greatest seasons of any hitter in the history of baseball, 1921. And he went through 3 cycles. Look at the slumps he had here. That's terrible. So again, no matter how well you're doing, or for that matter, how poorly you're doing, or how stabilized you're doing, there's always a cycle. There's always a sub-cycle. And if you don't understand that, it's kind of foolhardy in this day and age of big data and analytics. Look back to that quadrant model that we showed you of the economy traversing a direction and a cycle. That's exactly what this is trying to tell you, that you not only have to know if it's strong or weak, you need to know direction and momentum and cycles. So I wanted to really drive that point home. Okay, now we're going to get to a part that gets a little esoteric, a little abstract, but I think it was this last weekend, Michael and I were pouring through the data, just intuitively thinking there's got to be more, something that really we could present to you guys that's just earth-shattering. Now, this might be somewhat geeky, but this is earth-shattering, trust me. We saw this and we're like, I think they're going to like to see this, because this is part and parcel of how their industry works. Okay, who's heard of the law of demand? Okay, great, I'm going home. Just kidding. It's simple. It's price and sales, or price and quantity of demand. Okay, and you see what's called an inverted demand curve. See that? I should say a negatively sloped demand curve. This is normal. This is how every industry works. This is every product works. This is just the way the world works. It should work this way, right? And if you get to more sophisticated models, you can talk about the movement of inelasticity, and so forth and so on. But generally, it's a negatively sloped demand curve. Okay, so let's go check out one of these in the industry. We're going to get there in a moment, because we're going to talk about the precursor to what I'm going to show you, because we're going to show you the demand curves for this industry, and it blew us away. But first, a preface. Affordability. Really cool chart. Okay, quickly to get your bearings, the red bars represent retail price. So you can see price going up. Okay, again, MSRP, new units only. And what was interesting, and I don't have time to show you these other array of charts, is that price was consistently going up by product, by class, by state, by region, by county, just consistently, typically going up, whereas sales were fluctuating down. And so this was very, very unusual. But before we get to the demand curves, let me zoom in on this chart, and I'll give you the other bearings in a moment. And let's go to 2003. It's always a good year. Okay, so you got in red, again, this price trend. And in green, in this black line, which is blue on my computer, okay, this is the median household income, okay? Now, what's really interesting is you can see that income started to wane at this point, which is about 2008. Does everybody see that? Income's going up, and then it stops and starts to reverse and starts to slowly taper up. Well, what affordability is generally about is about income, or disposable income, or a willingness to pay for something, and whatever the product is that you want to buy. And so these green bars represent the percentage. Okay, this is a new ratio that we just drummed up, that we're actually going to evolve, so it's preliminary, but it's kind of cool. It shows the percentage of median household income spent on a motorcycle, MSRP-based priced motorcycle. And what was really interesting to us is that if you can see, it generally ranges about 19, 20, 21%. And if we go back in time to give you the full range of history, you can see that. Okay, but what's happening recently, I should say relatively recently, is because of this income reversal, the affordability now has hit 24%. Now, okay, that's an abstract number because we just created this ratio, but what's interesting is that we do affordability modeling for a whole bunch of different industries, like the rental industry, for sale housing, and so forth. And you take the rental industry, for example, once you hit around 40%, 45% of your income spent on rent, that submarket's going to be in trouble, unless you're LA, because everybody in LA is crazy, apparently. Half the people pay over 50% of their income on rent, but that's an aberration. I think it's like mostly these weirdos from Hollywood or what have you. So, but this is really, really important to understand, because after we built this chart, okay, we played around with this elasticity of demand, or these demand curves. So let's just put 1995 and 1999 on the map. Let me give you some quick bearings on what's happening. There's not a lot going on, but there's some stuff. This axis is your sales, okay? And here is your price, okay? What's happening here? This is a completely inverted demand curve. This should not be happening. Your prices increase and your units increase. So we saw this and we're like, okay, let's go back to the data. The data must be wrong. There's a blow in the model. We recalculated it over and over again. This is what happened. Now, I met with Pat and Tim and they were like, well, part of it is because the bikes and the brands and the models are at a higher end. I'm like, yes, that's true, but it still doesn't belabor the point that you've got an inverted demand curve. And so we started asking questions about product and about looking at lower priced product. And we did a quick query and I realized that I believe, if my memory is correct, the last new motorcycle that sold under $1,000 was January of 2011. And again, I'm only 60 days into this, but I think that's a fascinating data point. Why? And so I called my friend who just got into a motorcycle accident literally three days ago, but he's fine. And he was really fascinated in what we're doing with the Motorcycle Industry Council. And I started asking him questions. We talked about price and quantity and all this, and we really starting to get some really great insight into the buyer, and we're going to hope to get a lot more of that. So let's go back to this demand curve, because here's where it gets really cool. So let's go to 2000 to 2004. These are all the months, by the way. I should have mentioned. Each dot represents a given month of units sold and price. So for this example, July of 1998, the average median retail price was $7,199. There were 38,281 units sold. Got it? So now let's go to 2000, 2004. Okay, what's happening here? This is this ugly green color that we didn't change, but this is still not right. This is still a positively sloped demand curve, but bad, like not really great, unsustainable. But it's starting to go in the right direction. So we're getting really excited at this point, kind of giving you an insight into how we work and how crazy we are. So then we took a look at 2005 to July of 2007. Why? Because August 2007 is the grand nexus point of when the economy fell off the cliff. So when the banks shut down, the whole world shut down. So let's just go right from 2005 to that point. A little bit flatter, going in an interesting direction. Now let's take a look at right after that recession from 2007 to 2009. Okay, now we're starting to get super uber excited. We're like, okay, it looks like the demand curve, and then the final coup de grace moment here, 2010 to 2014, we're like, yes. The industry is now gone from an inverted, unhealthy, unsustainable demand curve to a more healthy curve. And I think part of it is affordability, part of it is a revisioning of the products that you all here are part of. Again, we're 60 days into this. I think we're mining and deciphering a lot of cool stuff. This is the harbinger, the beginning of a relationship that we're going to have with Tim to really decipher, to really understand what the heck's going on. We think this is a forebearer. This is the beginning of our insight, new insight into your industry that we could share with all of you. That's my mission, by the way. One of my mandates is to be able to share our findings with you. This, to me, was an extraordinarily insightful finding, and I think Michael and I were like dancing around our tables after we found this one. Any questions about this, by the way, before we move on, because I know this is a bit of a abstract concept. Yes, sir?
Just include the two-wheel motorcycle, or does it also include ATV and side-by-side?
Awesome question. So right now, what we can do with this chart is we can look at these categories that I do have. Hope to have more later, but we have dual, off-highway, on-highway scooter, and if we want to get specific, we can get to one of these. Is there one you wish me to press right now and we can see?
On-highway.
On-highway?
The answer is it's only two-wheel product.
Oh, yes, correct. If we look at on-highway. So on-highway, is a little bit more traditional. It's following a little bit more of the laws of demand. But that being said, there was this change in evolution of the demand curve.
Can we see the off-road?
Sure. And to be really cool about this, let's just take you through the steps again, because it's a little easier to see with too much data. So there's 95 to 99, positively sloped demand curve. From 2000 to 2004, it was actually somewhat correct. In 2005, correct. 2007 to 2009, not bad. And 2014.
Let's see the dual.
Sure. This is great. This is exactly what I hoped would happen. I got it. No data. Oh, sorry. And let's start from the beginning again. So there's 1995, 1999. Pretty much flat there. Flat, slightly negatively sloped, slightly negatively sloped. And then that's really interesting that it's flat.
So it's scooter that's kind of skewing everything else?
Possibly, and we need to look deeper. I can't make I'm a New Yorker, right? I just like to tell you exactly what the truth is on all topics, right? But I need to tell you that we need to look a little further into that before I make a judgment call on that. But it could be, could very well be. And plus, I mean, to get really granular, we can say, okay, well, what about California? And we can just click on California, and this entire thing will shift. There you go. Now, California is inverted. See this purple line? Okay? This is the current, 5-year trend, if you will, roughly 4.5, 5 years. And California definitely lives in a bubble. A lot of the trends we see are counter to a lot of the other industry averages and equilibrium. So you always have to keep that in mind. Pretty cool stuff. Okay. Any more questions about this? I was really blown away by the fact that you guys really wanted to stick on this topic. It's great. So what else do we have here? We're going to skip this because of time constraints, and we're going to go right to the really, really cool stuff, which is the what if demand. And this is going to allow you to see what's going on with the forecast of your industry, right? This is going to allow you to actually forecast right now in this room. So if you bear with me just a second here, I'm going to just do a couple quick setup items here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you this really cool dashboard, and I want you to focus on that number right here. Okay? This is our forecast, our scenario-based what-if forecast for next year's growth in sales, 9.67%. But we're going to change that in a moment. Okay? And what we're going to do here, hold on a second. I'm going to blow this up so you can see what's going on. Okay? So, let me explain what's happening. What we did, and it may be a little hard to read, I apologize for that, but this is a really uber cool model because this is interactive, live forecasting. I'm not just going to throw you a chart and say, oh, here's our forecast. You'll get to participate if you wish. So what we did is we looked at total units, new sales, and then we chose 4 drivers. Okay, it's a little hard to see right there, but we chose, and maybe I could just use this zoom to literally show you. There you go. We used our national TPSI index, which you've just seen several times. We used PCE, retail spending, total non-farm employment, consumer confidence, GDP, just because a lot of people want to see GDP, so we threw it in there, and corporate profits after tax. Now, the way the model works is, and this, actually there's a lot of features I'm not going to go over, but the way this works is you plug in what you think those drivers are going to do next year, and your motorcycle sales, revenue, prices, what have you, by brand, by model, by whatever, right now we're just looking at the total US, will pop out automatically It's the instant gratification forecasting tool, if you will. So let's take a look at what's going on before I throw in a worst case scenario or a dismal scenario, if you will, and a real positive ebullient scenario. So right now, and I'll read this off the screen here, you've got TPSI right now at 484. So let's build in right now, as I explain this, kind of a bad scenario case. Let's just say the TPSI is going to reverse course. Let's see. Hold on a second. Make sure I'm in there. Okay. Let's just say the TPSI is going to reverse course. Oh, what's happening here? There we go. That's weird. Try this one more time. Okay. I may not be able to use my zoom tool. Very strange. Say we're going to, third time's the charm. Let's just say we're going to reverse course, and we're going to, and we're going to try, make the TPSI at 480, and we're going to take consumer demand down to 4%, or say 3.5%. Can everybody see this barely? Somewhat? Hopefully you can squint. We're going to take total non-farm job down to 1.5%, still positive but not great. Consumer confidence reverse courses a bit to 80. GDP goes from 4.1% to say 3.5%. And we have corporate profits after taxes, let's just say, goes to 4%. Let me use my zoom tool here. There's, that take about 30 seconds to understand that your unit sales will go about 2.9%. Now that's taking 6 key drivers of your industry and putting in a pretty sobering scenario, right? I mean, our recommended forecasts are driving numbers higher than what I just input, okay? Although we're using a model with thousands of drivers and so forth. But for these 6 drivers here, that's kind of a too cautious of a scenario. So let's now go and do something a little bit more ebullient. Let's say TPSI goes to 550. Consumer demand measured by PCE goes up to 5%. Possible. Okay, maybe not that possible. Let's go to 4.5%. And let's see, employment goes up to 2.8%. And consumer confidence gets to 110. And GDP gets to 4.9%. And corporate profits gets to 6%. That's pretty good. And that's all possible. That's very possible. About a 10% growth in sales. Would anybody enjoy to see a 10% growth in sales? No? Yeah. And that's just not like, oh yeah, 10%, you guys are just going to do 10%. I mean, that's 9.85% based on mathematics, based on Moneyball-based paradigm of really grabbing all the data, generating an algorithm, and saying if these things happen, the likelihood that you're going to get 10% are extremely high. Now, I like to open it up to anybody in the audience that wants to throw in a couple of numbers. And again, we're looking at our TPSI, which I think you understand, 500 is equilibrium. We're looking at PCE, non-farm employment, consumer confidence, GDP, and corporate profits. And even if you don't know specifically these drivers, you can kind of take a look at what's happened over the last, say, 3 years to give you a guidepost to do a quick forecast. Does anybody want to do one, please? Sure.
Here. Just a quick question. As you go looking backwards in your model here, you can validate with that weighting and those parameters that had you known that retrospectively, it would have delivered the industry volume that we actually occurred?
That's your question, if I understand it correctly, is that to validate the drivers that we chose, correct?
Correct.
And these are these drivers. I'm just producing a scenario right now, a scenario that we chose just for ease of illustration. But the handout that Michael has, and that's out in the lobby, I believe, has this exact illustration. We would choose scenarios that grab these drivers or part of these drivers. Now, this is where the Clint Eastwood stuff comes in, okay? Because the idea of analytics is not like, oh, I'm just going to grab those 5 on top. And by the way, you'd equally grab the 5 on top on this list here because these are negatively correlated, just as valuable, right? But that's where the beauty, the art, the science, the qualitative, the right brain comes in, the intuitive. You're an executive, and you know with every fiber of your soul that there's a new driver out there that you just feel. There's a new demographic. There's a new way that people are thinking and behaving. And that driver might be somewhere in the midst of nowhere land where it doesn't really correlate. The mathematics don't support it. But you know how easy it is to plug it in and see what happens? That's the blending. That's the bridge between analytics and the trouble with the curve, qualitative, creative side. Okay, so to answer your question, it's not about choosing a finite group of drivers that pass some test. It's about doing multiple scenarios. Okay, so just an important point there.
So what do you think those 5 numbers are going to be next year, realistically?
Realistically, I think you guys are going to probably do anywhere from 4 to 6%, given the way the economy's going, knowing what we know about the drivers that we've analyzed.
Just a question about, do you have a driver in there that's identifying a big concern in this room is the age of the owners of these motorcycles being 59, but then also the impact of that trending in that direction?
Yes. I have a great chart that I just took out because we didn't have the time, but it looks at age cohorts. In fact, I probably can go there fairly quickly and show you. Yes, so here's, I'll try to do this very quickly. This is motorcycle sales by age, by population by age. And if we just quickly, because straight population doesn't tell you anything, so you have to kind of look at year-over-year growth. So let me just quickly throw that on there. Lo and behold, we have something a little bit more pretty and something a little bit more valid to look at. Oops, hold on a second. I'm actually looking at something different here. Hold on one second. It's down here. This is the issue when you have like a million different options at your disposal. There we go. And we'll take that out to 12. Okay, we're there. So, in red is population, in black is your sales, okay? And this is just overall population growth, which is actually slowed. But if we look at, to answer your question, I'm going to try to answer it, we're going to focus on the 35 to 54-year-olds. And let's just quickly go down by BEA region. Okay, and I just want you to focus on this red line, okay? See how the population is decreasing, 35 to 54, and by the way, we have forecasts out 20 years on this data. Just didn't want to present that as well today, but Mideast, New England, you get the picture. We're going through every region of the U.S., and the demographic trend from the 35 to 54-year-olds are just going down, period. There's no flattening. There's maybe a sub-cycle flattening, but it's pretty much going down. Now, this is where you want to focus on. Let's click this little filter right here, 20 to 34. Boom. Without exception, every region of the U.S., and you can even claim that this is still going up, plain states, they're all going up. Now, this is a great question because I had a really good series of slides that went right before this. So to answer your question, let me just go to those slides right now because I think it really is quintessentially what I think you're talking about. It's the idea when you choose drivers. I'm going to wrap up this question with this really nice answer here. You have to understand the difference between strategy and tactics, strategic drivers and tactical drivers. When you talk about population shifts, that's a strategic driver, okay? Tracking population, usually numbers come out once a year, and you really are planning for a decade in advance to find out where these demographic trends are going. That's a strategic driver. Whereas if you're looking at new hires or a supply of new homes, that's a tactical driver. And just to kind of bring this home, strategy, I'm shifting to a football metaphor now, strategy is like your playbook. You figure out what you want to be as a company, who you want to be, and what you're going to develop, what product for what demographic, correct? That's strategic drivers. Whereas tactical is, we got a play to run. We have to make our quarterly numbers. We have to make our annual numbers. What's the play? So what we're dealing with here is sort of, when you talk about population, that's more of a strategic driver, and I sort of shelved that for today, although with your question I brought it back. We were really talking about tactical drivers. Yes?
There might have been a bit of a miscommunication on the driver, and as your model showed, plenty of opportunity with the younger guys coming in. So you demonstrated that we all know that the opportunity resides in front of us. The driver I was trying to identify was the purchasing age, the age of the current population of motorcycle owners, and the direction that that has been trending over time, and how to, meaning showing that that market opportunity is there, but we're missing. If you look at all the data, we won't capture all that opportunity as our age continues to grow older and disappears.
I agree, and right now we just have the general sales data. We don't have it aligned with the transactions, and I think I bugged the heck out of Pat and Nevin and Tim, and I'll get it, but I think this was like the first step is to keep it a little bit more general. But you're dead on. You're right on. What you're talking about is transactional. Understanding the transaction, is that a fair statement? I met the head of analytics for McDonald's worldwide, and we chatted, and I said, so how do you deal with your transaction data? And he kind of whispered in my ear, we don't do anything with our transaction data, and I almost keeled over. They're sitting on tons of transaction data, and I think you've got tons of transaction data, and we can't wait to get at it, because I think it'll help answer your question. So,
Question.
yes.
So you take the analytics to build the various scenarios that you have. However, in much of the part of our country, we've got a highly seasonal business, and we've had, in some cases, unprecedented weather that's come about. So we go through all these exercises here, and it can shut off a good portion of the selling seasons that we have. What do you say to something like that?
That's a great question. Just read the almanac. I don't have an answer for that. I think that I can tell you, and the reason why I don't have an answer is because we're 60 days into this, but we are doing lots of seasonality analysis for a whole host of clients that include very highly risky drivers like weather, default risk, things like that are just unexpected. And there are ways to prepare for that, but you're right. I mean, you can't predict that a monsoon's going to occur in Florida. That's just going to wipe out your sales for a quarter or two. But what you can do is prepare for that and look at, again, history, data analytics, and then also look at the intuition. So it's a conversation that has to kind of go offline and get a little bit more complex, because the answers are not immediate and they're not easy, but there are planning tools where you can use to help lessen the damage, because there's no analytics alive that's going to protect your sales and your revenue for an unexpected weather event, but what it can do is help diminish that risk to some degree. That's the best I could do for that. Yes?
Just a quick question. As MIC members, by chance, is this data available to us to play with?
Some form of it's going to be available. I just don't know what. I think the mandate was, they hired us to help out the membership and to provide some tool for some information about forecasting and trends, which we're doing now. And we imagine we're going to be packaging something up quarterly. I think we're going to maybe do some webinars. We haven't really decided, but I'm really excited because we work in so many different industries, and when I found out we were getting motorcycle data, I was like, what? And so you can expect some really cool stuff being sent your way. I just don't know the frequency or the content at this point, but it's going to be cool. And some of the stuff is already, probably going to be available soon. But thank you for that. That's Stay tuned. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I'm squinting because I got this light blazing in my eye.
In the past, there's been a lot of talk about how the housing market and motorcycle market seem to trend together. Have you taken a look at that, the housing market and motorcycle market trending?
We are, and we probably have more housing data than probably anybody you can imagine. Got a lot of third-party sources that we have and a lot of our own primary research. Like I said, for this assignment, for this presentation, we looked at permits and a few things, and some of it jumped out at us as looking pretty good. I would expect that there's going to be several key drivers that are going to highly correlate to motorcycle sales, because as the housing market goes, is generally how America's economy is going to go. To some extent, though, we do see that changing. The home ownership rates are down, as you're probably well aware. More people are renting. So there's a lot of in-the-air change as far as housing drivers versus other industries, but I would expect, at least over the next decade or so, we're going to be using several key housing drivers. Yes.
Yes, going back to the data question before, when this is going to be available to the members, will that be available in a dynamic way or in a static way?
Still under discussion. I'm hoping that we can provide some dynamism so you could plug in what you want. And
If it is, that would be recommendable in case.
Oh, of course. Oh, yeah. No, everything we try to do is dynamic, modular, interactive. So, yeah, that's still under discussion. We're trying to figure that out.
Thank you.
And if you do have a question in the meantime, just call us up. That's great. There's a real interest here. So does anybody want to just provide a forecast? Go down 6 drivers and see what comes out? There's got to be one brave soul in the audience. By the way, we have several clients when we're doing planning and strategy year end, and the CEO just loves to go in there and do 2 scenarios, just kind of like I did. A doomsday, world-ending scenario, so he knows the minimum amount of money he's going to make, and then a moderately optimistic one, and then he gauges everybody's bonuses and salaries off those 2 points. I'm serious. So I get a lot of calls in off-season trying to influence the way we do things. Come on, someone's got to take a shot at this. Anybody? No? All right, that's all right. So I'm going to finish up with a couple of slides. And how are we doing for time here? Oh, good, perfect. Got a couple, 5 more minutes, 10 more minutes, and then we'll wrap up. So, epilogue. Here we go. Cool stuff. Who's heard of this book? Michael Porter, Competitive Strategy. If you haven't purchased it or heard of it, buy it. It's a classic. Okay? Talks about a lot of different traditional economic market-based theory. But then there's this other book that a lot of people haven't heard of, Blue Ocean Strategy. Has anybody heard of this? Yes? Oh, good. This is kind of, again, metaphorical, Moneyball versus Trouble with the Curve. Competitive Strategy talks about 5 forces: power of the supplier, substitutes, new entrants, competitors, customer power. But Blue Ocean Strategy is something a bit different. And I think both books complement each other very well because they really attack the issue of business growth differently. Okay? Blue Ocean Strategy, the theory here is that the red bubble there represents your industry. It's a bloody red ocean. How about that for kind of a symbol? That you're all fighting for a limited market share. There are only a limited amount of customers, okay? And what happens is, what do? Well, you segment. You spend money on research. Aha! The 55-year-olds that drive scooters in Florida that go visit their parents on a Saturday, And what happens is, your finite market share gets infinitely cut into these super segments. And the Blue Ocean Strategy says it's not a really visionary way of looking at your industry, okay? So what it does is it places your industry, the competitive, finite, market share-based industry, in context to the rest of your potential, which is hence the term blue ocean strategy. What comes outside your bubble, if you will, your red ocean, your industry? Well, there are prospective buyers that are just about to buy a motorcycle. Now, this is my wife sitting in the back, so she's probably going to be like, what? But ever since the last 60 days, I've been really doing the data and looking at your industry. Sorry, sweetie. I'm thinking about buying something, a scooter, a Vespa, something. It's kind of cool. We'll talk later. But I probably now moved into the prospective bubble, perhaps, and then probably by like 6 p.m. I'll be moving out. These are the people that refuse to buy a motorcycle. This is my mom and my dad. Okay, I mean, look, let's think about my psychometrics here. I'm New Yorker, I'm Jewish, okay? Enough said. My mother actually quoted saying, if you buy a motorcycle, I will disown you. Pretty much, that's in the playbook. And then there's this is kind of an add-on to their model, the analog customer, okay? And that's kind of a more complex issue, but it's kind of a different customer that doesn't really belong in any specific category. And then there's this unexplored, undiscovered customer, ones that probably don't give motorcycles, time of day. They're like indifferent. They don't dislike them. They don't like them. But there are a myriad segment of these unexplored customers. And the blue ocean strategy, in essence, is saying, look, your industry and your business are really, if you define it in a very finite way, in a discrete, small way, you're missing out on a massive, massive audience. The classic example of blue ocean strategy is Cirque du Soleil. Okay? They decided they wanted to go in the circus business, and what did they do? Well, they decided, okay, we're going to get rid of all the stuff that's really very inefficient, like housing elephants, feeding, animals, and they just got rid of all that. And as you know, I'm sure you guys are familiar with the Cirque du Soleil story, they decided to enter and find a new, undiscovered, unexplored customer, someone that would go to the circus, but really wasn't a circus goer. And that was kind of the key to their success. So what are we talking about as we wrap up here with getting back to the metaphors and themes? Left brain, right brain. These two books represent that, okay? Another example, which I love, okay? Samsung versus, who's going to pop up here? Apple. What's the difference here? Samsung is an unbelievable company. And I'm not saying that one is innovative and one's not. They're both, obviously have their strengths in innovation and research. But Samsung really, really doesn't make a move unless it has research to back it up. They spent over $12 billion last year in research. Everything they do, the size, the buttons, the customer tells them what they want. Apple, they couldn't care less. They basically, their motto is the customer doesn't know what they want, and we're going to build it. Now again, is one right and one wrong? No, they're both right. And so to infuse both sides of this paradigm into your thinking, into your business, is key. You just can't do data and analytics. You've got to have the Clint Eastwood on the other side. So, in summary, the bridge metaphor, I love it. The bridging of motorcycle BI. There's Moneyball, trouble with the curve. There's big data, there's intuition. There's deep analytics, there's pragmatic experience. There's segmenting demand, there's developing new products. Porter's 5 forces, blue ocean strategy, Apple, Samsung. Actually, you know what? I just noticed something. That should have been flipped. How about that? I caught it. And maybe my brain needs to be realigned. Okay, anyway, I believe, by the way, I just threw this in there. These are the books that influenced me highly. It's a mixture of psychology, business analytics, mythology. And with that, I just want to say thank you very, very much. I really appreciate being part of the team now. Please reach out to any one of us. We love data, we love analytics, so any question we'd love to field. Thank you, and have a great rest of the afternoon and evening.
To the MIC team, token of our appreciation for your time and efforts.
Thank you.
I shouldn't say time because I caught all the late night stuff and all that. So thank you for the investment you've made in us and the presentation and the potential for what we expect to be quarterly information related to this very topic. So David, we thank you and the team. Erica, remember, the best first ride on a motorcycle is an MSF basic rider course. We can set you up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Just very quickly as we close, for some of you who came in the side door, maybe didn't pick up a badge or you didn't pick up the bag has a little memento. You'll notice it up on the screens, a little paperweight for you. We want you to get that. Also, a folder with handouts from today. Dr. Adibi has given us the reports. They're on your table. Make sure you grab one of those. We will have down at the office, for those of you attending the open house, you'll be able to look through Stat Annual just hot off the press. If you have a star on your name badge or your staff or board members, you have already signed up for the open house. We hope to see you there. For those of you that may not have a star, can make it to the open house, we're hoping you have a debit or credit card. Our vending machine takes debit or credit cards. We might be a little light on food, but we plan for those of you who sent the RSVP in. Lastly, in the folder, an MSF 12-page book. It's kind of an update that will be used kind of around the world starting this weekend in Maryland to all the training and safety communicators at a conference there, and then goes on to Germany this next week, and then, of course, on to EICMA, so our worldwide report on MSF activities. So very quickly, let me just recap in just a couple of moments here, our day. Number one, I want to thank Dennis for his great leadership as chair, his comments today, and the path you're charting along with the board for the start of our next 100 years. Dr. Adibi, I love the humor, the data, the politics, the understanding of the macro and the implications, good to know information. For Dr. Paul Leinberger, be lost without him. I think he hit it very well, as he always does. He comes up with that statement that kind of drives our thinking, the positive anxiety, and I thought so well put. We can look at a lot of data, and we can look historical, and we can kind of predict and forecast, and David's just done a wonderful job of that. But Paul, you've given us key insights into what some of the great marketing companies of the world are doing to strike that nerve, and we think critical there. And I think Gary McKechnie then following up with the power of saying yes and the great things that happen with yes. Paul Leinberger's work kind of tells us how to trigger, to strike that nerve, and get people to say yes. David, we appreciate your insights, and I'm encouraged and not at all surprised by the sophistication of this group that wanted more. We'll be demoing some of that at the open house, as you mentioned, for a few of the vehicle manufacturers. We can schedule other meetings. We are looking at a quarterly report to come out in a couple of months, and we expect to give you some insights into that. It is the type of thing that if you're interested in additional services, you can talk directly with Competitive Analytics and the team there. They'll all be at the open house as well. Mark Boyer, stand please from the back there. This is a gentleman we talked about earlier today as one of our key consultants. Strategic communications, that thing we don't call public, we call public policy, but kind of as issues crisis management for all the late night hours and protecting us. Everything we've done here is about protecting, preserving, and promoting. And Gary McKechnie, I'm going to close with you, and that was thank you for reminding us what we're really selling, and those are the experiences. At the open house, you can talk with Ricardo Rodriguez-Long, the Discover Today's motorcycling team, Pat Murphy, Pam Ahmed on emissions, Kathy Van Cleek, and Dwayne Taylor on our government relations efforts. There's more and more and more. We're in a newly done building, and we're excited about some of the imagery that, again, focuses on not the product but the experiences. We hope you enjoy it, and we will look forward to the next time we meet. Thanks again, everyone.